Hi everyone, my name is Stephen Tripp. I'll be hosting the Environment and Energy Forum on Sunday, September 29th at 1 p.m. at the Guildford Leagues Club. We've come out to Fairfield today. We're right in front of Chris Bowen's office here in Fairfield, and I was expecting to see wind turbines everywhere and big, large-scale solar farms all across Fairfield. We haven't seen any at all. The problem is with these MPs, they're taking net zero policies and they're pushing it out on rural communities, on prime agricultural land, and off our pristine coastlines in the Illawarra and Port Stephens and other areas like that. And that's what this forum is all about, highlighting those issues, also highlighting some issues about nuclear energy. It's going to be an information session for all of you. Please head to eefguildford.eventbrite.com. Tickets are only $5. Thank you, everyone, and we hope to see you there.
Hi, perhaps you recognize me. It's your favorite president.
We will decide who comes to this country and the circumstances in which they come.
I know you want to ban our national flags, but we're going to wave you goodbye.
What does confrontational mean? It means you'll fight for what you believe.
Enough was enough! And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother!
It is not merely our privilege to be strong, it is our duty to be strong.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Commanding the Narrative. My name is Stephen Tripp. Thank you to everyone who is watching live on Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube. If you are watching live, you can contribute to today's discussion through the live chat. We'll read out your comments and your questions, and at some point I'll put the link in the chat. I call it live talkback streaming, not talkback radio. So if you want to call in and have your say, just click that StreamYard link. I will put it in the chat at some point through this episode. And thank you everyone else who are watching, maybe not live at other times. Just feel free to subscribe and like and all that sort of thing. It really helps. But if you want to support us, I'll let you know every single week on how you can do that. It's by heading to Buy Me a Coffee, and you can throw us a few dollars there. It helps to pay for the stream, it helps to pay for the website, and most importantly, it gives me a warm and fuzzy feeling inside, which is very, very important. Just like Sandra Burke did this week, she bought us 5 coffees. Now, Sandra's the new spokeswoman for Advance Australia, so she's doing some fantastic work there. She's got a big documentary coming out soon. We're all looking forward to that. But Sandra said, Stephen provides hard-hitting insights into our increasingly murky political landscape, pushing past the increasing volume of mainstream media propaganda. Priority uptake for anyone who is a free thinker. Well, thank you very much, Sandra. It's much appreciated. It always blows me away when people want to part with their hard-earned money just to support me and support Commanding the Narrative. It's much appreciated. So if you do want to show some appreciation, please head to Buy Me a Coffee. If you want to keep up to date with everything that we're doing, head to commandingthenarrative.com. Very easy to remember, commandingthenarrative.com. At the top right-hand corner, you hit the sign up button. If you do that, you'll get a weekly newsletter with all the podcasts that we do, any articles that I might write, or events coming up, or anything that's happening in our little sphere here at Commanding the Narrative. It's the best way. Don't rely on social media. Head straight to the website and sign up. Just keep up to date. I've got so many rods in the fire, so it's hard to keep up myself. Sometimes I have to read the newsletter just to know exactly what I'm doing. One of those things that I am doing is the Environment and Energy Forum. It's coming up very, very quickly, just over a week now, at the Guildford Leagues Club on Sunday, September 29th at 1 p.m. We're going to have a whole host of great speakers: Di Lee, Matthew Kamanzuli, Craig Kelly, Steve Christou, Kevin Lockray, Wade Northhausen, Nick Hader from ADH is going to be there. Sandra Burke, who I just mentioned, is going to be there. Dr. Mark Ho from the Australian Nuclear Association, and also Paul Vallejo. Both of those men will be giving some information on nuclear energy and how we can implement it here in Australia, and also Grant Piper of the National Rational Energy Network. Tickets are only $5. How can you say no to that? $5. And as it said in the little promotional intro there, it's right in the heart of Chris Bowen's electorate of McMahon. Chris Bowen's the minister that is pushing a lot of these policies on rural and regional areas. So we would like for a big showing. It's hard to get the word out. So if you can spread the word and if you can come, it would be much appreciated. And lastly, just to finish off before we get to our very great guest today, the Light newspaper. With misinformation and disinformation laws happening at the moment, this might be our fallback one day. You know, old school, hard copy media, newspapers might be the only way of getting information out there. The Light Australia is a wonderful resource for that. They have some excellent authors. Yours truly is in there somewhere. So if you want to become a distributor, it would be much appreciated, because we do rely on grassroots people to get the Light out to people. And if you're in Sydney and you're close to the Northern Beaches, you can call the number 0406 861 816. There's some pallets that have already been paid for by some paid generous donors, and you can help distribute the Light for free. You just have to give up your time. If you're elsewhere in Australia, go to the website, and you will have to purchase the copies. I think they're about 15 cents a copy, which is I mean, if you want to make that contribution to your community, please do so by heading to the Light. Today, we're going to do a bit of it's a crazy time, and I've got a guest coming on who we've had on the show previously. He's been on both the Ex-Candidates and Commanding the Narrative. His name is Victor Dalziel. He's a very talented writer. He's been published in The Spectator Australia and also overseas in America in the Brownstone Institute and some other publications. He's also a researcher. I'm always impressed by his thorough research. And he's also a very good podcaster as well. I know he's been very busy lately, but he's saddled up, ready to go again. Let's bring him on. Victor, welcome back to Commanding the Narrative.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for the nice intro there.
No, it's well-deserved on your part. Now, mate, we're living in a lot of turmoil in the world at the moment. We've just had another assassination attempt on Donald Trump. There's all this stuff happening in the Middle East with Hezbollah and these walkie-talkies and pages that have been blowing up. What's your take on everything at the moment? Where are we at in the world?
Well, I mean, we all kind of knew in January, February with the election, or the American election going on this year, that things were going to get a little bit out of hand. And we weren't sure what was going to happen. There were a few of us, I think I may have mentioned, I think you as well, that there might be an assassination attempt. I don't think anyone, though, I certainly wouldn't have thought that what has transpired is real, is happening. And I think if we talk specifically about the Trump case, the most concerning part for me about that whole situation and how that is playing out is this normalization now of people trying to kill Trump. Because, and I say that because there's actually, and we spoke about this briefly before we came on, there's almost technically been 3 attempts, because there was that very unusual occurrence that happened in Arizona last week, which, by the way, if you look up on Google, you can find nothing about it. But basically, I looked it up and I've got some information here. 15 people that were at the rally, which I think was in Phoenix, in Arizona, after the rally, they all had the same symptoms. And the symptoms were severe irritation in the eyes. And 6 of those people ended up in hospital. And those people that ended up in hospital were actually blind because of whatever was in their eyes for a number of days. They are recovered now. But when you look into it, the only people that are investigating what actually happened to those individuals is the Trump team itself. And that was just days before this second attempt, which again, the mainstream media has kind of gone a bit of a meh, that's happening again. And not only is the normalization of people trying to kill Trump alarming, but it's just, for me as well, as an outsider, because I want to be clear that I'm not a massive Trump fan. I'm not blue, I'm not red, I'm kind of somewhere in between both of that. But I am alarmed about anyone trying to kill somebody else. And the issue that I have, or the second issue I have, is that the media in America, particularly the more left-associated media, are not taking any responsibility for their role in these assassination attempts and the ongoing attempts to take Trump's life.
Well, it blew me away. You know, the contrast between the first assassination attempt and the second assassination attempt. When I heard about the second one, I went to the same sources. I went to X, I went to all the social media. I went to the news websites. I couldn't find it anywhere on my feeds. It was the fourth story on news.com.au, which blew my mind. An assassination attempt on a president is your fourth top story. Interestingly, it did have four stories on the ABC, which goes to show that it's all about commanding the narrative. You know, the ABC definitely has a bias, so sure, they want to talk about it and put their views out there. But maybe it was just the fact that there was no footage of this attempt, like whereas the one before there was clear footage of him getting shot. There was that photo of him underneath the flag with his fist raised in the air. These are iconic moments. That didn't happen in the second attempt, so potentially that's why the media didn't cover it as much. But it is still a massive, significant event in world history, not just in our times now. That this will be, I mean, you always go back to assassination attempts on presidents. It's always replayed and it's always talked about, but it seems like it almost never happened. The media machine just moves on and they barely touched on it.
Yeah, I mean, my most cynical side would say they learnt their lesson from the first assassination attempt, because that really backfired on them, because that image in particular of Trump, you know, we talk about footage and image and how these images will be remembered 100 years from now, 500 years. This is something that will always be remembered, that image of him with his fist in the air. Just because of all the emotions that it arises in people, whether you're a supporter with him or not. But to do that in the face of what had just happened is incredibly brave.
Well, it was so iconic that some people on the left were saying that it was staged, that Trump staged the assassination attempt because it was almost too perfect how it played out.
I would push back on that hard, because if you remember the reaction from the people, his protectors, his bodyguards, they kept trying to pull him down. I don't. The idea that even someone as kind of narcissistic, confident, arrogant, whatever you want to call him, as Trump, would allow himself, particularly there was a bit of a breeze that day, because I remember seeing the flags in the background blowing, to allow himself to potentially be shot in the head as a publicity stunt, that's a step too far. It is definitely a step too far. That was not staged. I've certainly heard criticism. I've certainly heard from the people that the second one was staged. And again, I think this just comes back to the whole fact that there's no videos, there's no footage, there's no pictures. And you're right that the news cycle on the second assassination attempt was, it did make it on X, probably more than anywhere else, but you did have to be quick, because they moved on super quick from that one. And I think that we saw that was going to happen when you look at some of the rhetoric around the first attempt. The first thing I want to point out is that a lot of the news sources like CNN and a lot of things that you see on YouTube, and I don't understand why they're doing this, but they constantly referred to Trump, even in regards to the first assassination attempt, as the presidential candidate or the Republican candidate. No, he's president. He's President Trump. And what they do, this kind of wording and this use of this narrative, is that actually not only are they trying to memory hold the fact that he was president for 4 years and the world didn't collapse, but it's also belittling him to the point where this is kind of like them saying, this is nothing, it's just a candidate. So I think that kind of wording is very deliberate. If you remember that our faithful leader, Anthony Albanese, he tweeted, and I remember reading this tweet on the day that it happened, and I wrote it down because I wanted to get it right. He said, this was the tweet: "The incident at former President Trump's campaign event in Pennsylvania is concerning and confronting." So he didn't even refer to it as an assassination attempt. And then it took him more than 24 hours to then come out and to condemn it. Now, I looked up just before I came on YouTube just to see what the #1 video of that event was. The name of the #1 video on YouTube covering that, which at the time, perhaps this is what they thought, but they've had plenty of time to amend the title of the video. The title is Moment Trump appears to be shot at rally.
What?
So, I mean...
What was the title again? Moment Trump appears?
At the moment, Trump appears to be shot at rally, or the moment Trump appears to be shot at rally. So I'm not sure if it was Fox News or CNN. It was one of the big networks in the US. But the fact that it's now been over 2 months since that event. But you see how, again, they're trying... This is
Fox as well, Fox 5.
Oh, it's Fox, is it? Oh, that I wasn't expecting it to be Fox.
Moment Trump.
Well, Fox is acknowledging that he's the president, and to be fair to Albo, he also did say former president. But I think more to your point, and the point that we're both making, is that if you reflect on these sort of situations and you kind of substitute out Trump and you pop in Obama or Clinton, I mean, could you just imagine what would be happening? It would be 24/7, and it'd be 24/7 if it happened in July with Obama or Clinton or even Hillary Clinton. It would still be running now. That they would juice that and milk that for as much as they could. But because it's Trump, then it's just an accepted part of, oh, well, that's what's happening now with Trump. Every week there's going to be an assassination attempt.
It just goes to show that we live in crazy times. We're dealing with 2 assassination attempts with Trump. There's this chemical attack that you spoke of in Arizona. Now there's these, as I mentioned before, with the Hezbollah having their pages and walkie-talkies blow up, and there's been civilian casualties that have come along with that. It's almost like we're watching some James Bond movie or something like that, but it's playing out in real time. It just goes to show that sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. We, as you said before, and rightly so, we predicted this months ago when we last spoke. We said there's going to be something that happens. They always talk about the October surprise. We're not even in October yet. We're still September. What else can happen? Because you just feel that this is building towards something. There's a crescendo happening.
Yeah. So a lot of the chatter online is that there needs to be an event that is going to either not force people to be locked down, but at the very least, create a feeling within the general population that one has to stay at home because they really want those mail-in votes. That's what they want. Because that way, I don't want to, we're on YouTube, right?
But now,
that's why I stopped, because I'm sure that more than anybody else's viewership or listeners, that people have already understood what I'm implying without me needing to actually go into what I'm saying. But that's where the online chatter is at now. As you identified, it built to a crescendo with Trump and the first assassination attempt, which was, it obviously backfired big time on them. And then there was a bit of a lull, and then it's building again. I think they were a bit taken back that they didn't get what they wanted in July, and so now they're kind of resetting. And you can certainly feel, if you're moving those circles and you're watching it online, you can feel that it's building up again.
But
there was something, if I can just quickly say, they're talking about it building up on X this morning, and this is kind of breaking in the US right now. There's been a whistleblower from within ABC News. I don't know if you saw that. I think it's literally just been on X the last hour or so, who is sworn that the Harris campaign insisted upon live fact-checking on the debate with Donald Trump, They also dictated the terms of the questions during the debate. So they obviously had pre-screened the questions and had asked the host, who did do it repeatedly to Trump. I don't know if you remember, but he asked him, I think it was 5 times, he fact-checked Trump. He did not fact-check Camilla once. And so a whistleblower who works at ABC News who was involved in that telecast has come forward to the speaker, Mike Johnson, and signed an affidavit to say that it was basically all a hoax and a setup.
See, we almost know this stuff instinctively, but if we were to say
it, did you see her performance? Now, look, like I said, like I'm not Trump, and I'm pretty down the center, so I can look at things sometimes. Well, I hope a little bit objectively, and I do remember thinking to myself, "Wow, okay, she did all right there."
But here's the thing, Victor. She did do well, and then straight afterwards, they were all saying she's won the election. Trump's lost the election. There's no way that he can win now after this horrible performance. And then only a few days later, there's another assassination attempt. Now you might say the assassination attempt was just some crazy loon, and he was acting alone, and none of this is connected. But if she has won the election based on that debate performance, then why don't you just let Trump flounder on his own? Why do we need any of these events? Why are these events happening? If Kamala's already got it in the bag, or are they seeing some polling? And I've heard that there is some polling out there that is very concerning for Harris.
Yes, there was some polling last week. It was only a small number. I think it was only about 3,000 people. But it was showing that Trump was actually looking towards a landslide. And if you notice, about two to 3 weeks ago, RFK Jr. came out in support of Trump, and Trump even suggested that he might put him in a very powerful position.
Good point. I want to talk about this because it's not just Trump now.
No, Dalziel Gabbard also came on board.
And he's got Vivek Ramaswamy standing there as well. He's got some good people around him that can do just as much damage as Trump could do to the establishment.
Yes, but he's actually somehow, and this does blow my mind, Trump is actually doing what the left always talk about doing, and that is he is bringing everybody together. Because if you look into, obviously, RFK, and if you look into Dalziel, they're more what you would consider like traditional leftists or kind of old school lefties. So you've got that crowd coming on board. And then you've got the libertarian. You just said his name. It's just escaped me for a sec.
Vivek Ramaswamy?
Vivek, sorry. Yeah, Vivek. So he's come on board, and he's definitely more of the libertarian side of things. So you are seeing a kind of a uniting. It's just not the uniting that the Democrats want. And I found it like almost, I'm not surprised, but I did find it very insulting to my fucking intelligence that they tried to bury that news with the whole Taylor Swift endorsement, which, like, you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to see that that was staged deliberately to kill that. And now the latest slogan, Kamala's latest slogan is a new way forward, ready for it. For those that don't know, Ready for It is one of Taylor Swift's famous, I think you know, because it's one of her most famous songs. So that's, now I have a...
But she's been there the last 4 years. What's the new way forward?
But thank you. That's exactly what I was going to say. I obviously... like with my OCD and my anal, I read New Way Forward and I'm deeply troubled by it because I'm like, hang on a second, a new way what? A new way compared to your last 4 years? So what's going to be different? Oh, actually, we don't know what's going to be different because she still hasn't actually released any policy. So other than her being like a Black Indian woman, there's nothing else we really know about her, or that the fact that she loves to laugh at her own jokes more than I think anyone ever has. I mean, she's not even that funny. I don't understand. But if you look at clips on her, and obviously TikTok generation and all that, and X, but a clip might go for 30 seconds. She puts in a little sound bite that maybe goes for 8 seconds and then laughs for the next 22 seconds. I don't really understand. Also, the most undemocratic process in the history of
Yes.
America is in how she actually ended up in that position, which is just extraordinary.
Yeah, where were the nominations? Where, I mean, RFK Jr. could have had a shot. Didn't happen. They did the same thing they did with Bernie Sanders, and it's just a repeat of history. And then they say that Trump is a threat to democracy. It's almost like a narcissist. A narcissist always, projects the what they're going to do on someone else, or they take your best qualities and they use them against you. It's playing out almost on a mass scale.
Yeah, and well, Carl Jung talks about exactly that. You project the worst qualities of yourself onto the other person, and the reason you find it so offensive and so abhorrent is because you're actually seeing yourself reflected to yourself. And yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. And talking about what they say about Trump, going back to what we were talking about before, I just noted on my notes here some of the things that they were actually saying about Trump before the first assassination attempt, and even things that they've said after the first assassination attempt. We've obviously got Cory Booker calling Trump a white supremacist. We have Dan Goldman, who's the billionaire congressman from New York. He went on the Jen Psaki show, and this is a legitimate quote, Stephen. He said, "The man is destructive to our democracy. He has to be eliminated."
Yeah.
There's no ambiguity around the word eliminated. And then Joe Biden came out just before he stepped down and said Donald Trump is a genuine threat to this nation. He's a threat to our freedom. He's a threat to our democracy. He's literally a threat to everything America stands for. And then after the first assassination attempt, the worst loser in the history of the world, Hillary Clinton, came out on Rachel Maddow's show and said, he's a danger to us and the world. His desire is to be a dictator. So, we were talking in the beginning about the fact that there's this complete inability of anybody to take responsibility for the fact that they've been calling this man Hitler for the best part of the last 9 years. And then he gets shot in the head, and people, I don't know if you've seen, but on Twitter, people are like, well, it's just his ear. Oh, and yes, this was something that I saw, which initially I thought was a joke, but that is a genuine cover of the New Republic, which is June 2024, American Fascism, what it would look like. And then it's Trump. Oh, these are people that don't have visual. It's Trump, and they've morphed his face into Hitler's.
But think that he was president already.
He was.
He was president for 4 years.
Yeah, and he started no wars.
And they're trying to make out, oh, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. Well, why didn't he do it already? If it's that bad, thought if you're in there and you want to have these plans, you get in there and you do it. But it was the opposite. He reduced taxes and blah 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 blah. He didn't. I remember when he was president, he didn't stop and he hit the ground running. Normally, they'll be quiet the first 100 days and just suss things out. And the same thing happens here in Australia. Not Trump. He was doing things even before he was inaugurated.
Yeah,
even before he officially became president, he was doing things.
And look, he is, I think the real danger and their real fear is what Trump is genuinely saying on Truth Social, and that is that he's actually admitted that he was a little bit hoodwinked in his first term in terms of who he hired. He didn't deliberately come out and hire all of the neocons. It was, he kind of arrived, like you said, he wanted to hit the ground running, and he took advice from as many people as he could, and he was told these were the best people for the job. And I think that what he's done is he's learned from that first term, and then he's seen what's happened over the last 4 years, 3.5 years, and he's met and been exposed to a lot more ideas, and unlike the Democrats, he's learned, and what he's learned is that I want to surround myself with the right people this time. And we've just discussed some of who those people are going to be. And I think that that's the establishment's biggest fear is that he is going to be a transformative president, and they don't want him to have that legacy. More to the point, the Clintons and the Obamas, they don't want him to be that president, because that is how they see themselves. And they also, particularly when it comes to Hillary, she's still bitter about the fact that she was not elected. You can see it in her eyes, you can see it in her non-verbals, the decline in her face, everything. She's just a bitter, twisted woman. You can see it. And you know what happens to people that get on the wrong side of the Clintons. And I'll leave it there again because we're still on YouTube.
Well, look, mate, we could talk all day about this stuff because it is.
Yeah, I probably could. Sorry, I'm probably, yeah.
No, it's front and center in the world right now. It is an important issue, but we do want to talk about the Greens. But before we get there, you've sent through some other screenshots as well. Do you want to touch on them quickly before we move on?
Well, most of the screenshots were in regards to elections in Australia. Because as I said to you before, like I'm one of those people that's like really locally focused, complaining about potholes and things, or internationally focused. And sometimes I think I should focus a little bit more in Australia, particularly on federal politics. But this was a graph that I came across, which was really surprising for me. So this is basically what this is gauging is the percentage of people who are satisfied with the state of democracy in Australia, and it's a timeline that is run from 1996 to 2018. However, I have found updated figures, and it has continued to track downwards. So the most recent figure was 2022, and in 2022 it was 45% of Australians are not happy with the state of democracy in Australia, and that actually, sorry.
The glaring thing for me is looking at the chart is that it was riding quite high up until about 2007, which is when John Howard lost the election and Kevin Rudd was elected. And since then, you can't point to one leader that I would say was a good leader of this country. We've just had mediocre at best.
Yes. So as someone that follows international relations, the Australian Parliament and our system and our leaders is a bit of a laughing stock internationally, particularly with that period with Gillard and Rudd, where it was almost like you woke up almost every single day wondering who was going to be leading our country. And then there was also that period, to be fair, with the Liberals, but it was Turnbull, Abbott, Morrison, and that was an embarrassment as well. So, but I mean, I think a lot of, from my own perspective, that the question around democracy in this country is still the fact that we don't get to pick the leader of the Liberal Party, the leader of the Labor Party. It's, you know, and then every 3 to 4 years, we just get lumped with these two choices. And lately, for me, as a undecided or, I don't know, centralist, either choices, they're almost exactly the same. They've almost morphed into the one sort of mega party. And I do empathise with Dutton, because I do feel that he has tried to make himself different and to go back to more sort of conservative values in the Liberal Party. But I feel like he's been a little bit hamstrung by the media in this country.
Look, I would take a slightly different take. I think he and both Littleproud, who's the leader of the Nationals, I think in the background, Littleproud has been doing a lot to direct Dutton in the right way. He did it on The Voice, he did it on nuclear policy. So I think the Nationals play a significant role in getting the Liberal Party back on track. I think we're looking at Dutton and expecting him to be like a Trump, to get in there quickly and just change everything, shake everything, and make it all better straight away. He's just not that temperament. He's going to take a slow and steady approach. It's going to be very controlled, and you can see that reflected in the polls. They're slowly rising. And look, his strategy might be a 2-election strategy, where he might be looking at the next election and saying, look, it's going to be very unlikely that the Liberal Party and National Party can win a coalition government. We're going to have to just, lay out the groundwork, set the table for another big election win the election after. I think the general public don't see that strategy. They just see someone who's, they look to America or they look to the UK with Nigel Farage, and they see these bombastic characters and they say, why can't we have that here? Well, we just don't have that at the moment. We have to deal with what we've got. And I think Dutton is doing good things. I'd like to see him be stronger on the misinformation, disinformation stuff. And I think they will come around on that. He certainly has played a significant role here in New South Wales with the federal intervention into the debacle that happened here recently. But it's just a slow and steady approach, and I think the public might not want that, but that's what they're just going to have to accept.
Yeah, I'm really glad to see that they've stopped trying to push him as this likable guy that's just like a dad, and he's really loving. Because I don't know if you remember when he was first announced, there were multiple covers of like the Australian, the Courier Mail, where it was him with his wife and his kids, and they were saying things along the lines of, you don't know our dad, he's not the hard enforcer, he's really loving, he's really sweet. And I thought, why are they doing this to him?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure, like, I'm pretty loving, I'm pretty sweet, but I do also a professional that tries to do a good job all the time. And those sort of characteristics, I don't know. I mean, sure, he's a family guy, that's good to know, but we all probably knew that just instinctively without that. I'm glad that they've tried to, or that they have moved on from that characterization of him like that. It's just unnecessary. It really is.
It's always so stupid, because once it doesn't matter whether it's Labor or Liberal, whenever a new leader emerges, they try and repackage them.
Yes.
Instead of just focusing on what got them to the dance originally, they've ascended to the leadership based on some values or some characteristics that they've already had. Why don't you just focus on those instead of trying to reinvent them? And it never works, because it's not their true self.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah. The one thing I will say in doing the research is I think that both Dutton and Albanese are in trouble. Because at the last election, their share of first preferences went down for both parties. Yeah. And for the Liberal Nationals, it was a bit of a disaster, actually. But I think that it surprises me that that a party can win on 32% first preferences. And it also surprises me in how strong you've mentioned the Greens, but also the Independents and One Nation are, and how, I mean, I know the Greens get a lot of kudos in the media, but the Independents, One Nation, they certainly don't get many mentions. And they're obviously very, very popular. And I feel moving forward that those parties are going to become more powerful, and maybe even you sent me the link for the Libertarian Party, which I believe used to be called the Liberal Democrats.
The Liberal Democrats, yeah.
Yeah. So they need to do something about that. And I'm not sure, having looked at their website, their social media, that they're doing much at all. I think, to be honest, and I know we're going to talk about this in depth a little bit more in terms of how they're reaching out, but there's a complacency and a bit of an arrogance on behalf of particularly Labor. And that surprises me. That really surprises me, given what happened at the last election.
This is a really good segue, because this was mainly the main topic that I wanted to talk about today, because we, as you said, the Labor and the Liberal Party's primary votes are in the doldrums. I mean, you can't go much lower than 32% of the primary vote, and they're still able to win government, but they're only able to win government based on Green preferences.
Yes.
Now, and also when you look at the Senate, it blew me away. It's probably more than 6 months ago now. The Greens were making a protest against Palestine, or against what's happening in Palestine in the Senate, and they all got up and walked out of the Senate. And when that happened, I'm like, look at them all. There's so many. There's 11 of them in there. There's 12 if you count Lydia Thorpe. They pick up one senator per state every election. So it's incredible how many Greens are in the Senate. I think I saw something on Advance Australia that said, and I might be getting the number slightly wrong, but there's 47 Greens members of Parliament and elected in all the parliaments around Australia, whether it be federal or state parliaments. It's an incredible amount. The Greens are certainly a force. They're not a force to be, downplayed or taken lightly. And there's been a surge in their support, at least to the point where they can get 12 senators. And that's what I wanted to pick apart today, coming from the view of someone that is on the fence, who doesn't pay any attention to politics. And you see it, I stand on the booth. I mean, the local government election was just last weekend. You see the people walk in, they've got no idea. They don't even know what ward they live in or what electorate they live in, let alone who to vote for, right? So I can just imagine, and I used to do this myself, you would go on the party websites the night before you go in to vote, and you just take 5 minutes to quickly look at their websites, and that can change who you're going to vote for. So the one that I really want to point out is the Greens, because I think, based on looking at all the party websites, the Greens is the best. Straight away for me, the thing that stands out is that there's zero of their members of Parliament on this front page here. Instead, it's just everyday people, ordinary people of all shapes, sizes, sexes, sexual orientation, color, whatever. And what it says to me is this is the party of inclusiveness. If you want to be part of something, you can with the Greens. It says right there, change is possible. Want to be part of it, join the movement, blah, blah, blah. And you scroll down, first thing off the top is cost of living. So this is going to be the massive thing for the upcoming election. And it just uses things that are going to grab your attention straight away. Big corporations are making record profits while ripping you off, with special attention to you. You be a part of something, you fight for something. It's all very colorful, it's professional. It's actually, you got to take your hat off to the Greens. It's very well done.
Yeah, this is a website that represents the year 2024, 100%. So what I hear a lot in academia, particularly when you're creating a visual like this in online or with AI or even just in a newsletter, it's a really common phrase. I hate this phrase, but it is everywhere right now. It says, "Where am I? I don't see me in here." So that's the feedback that you'll get if you've missed what they were looking for. So in here, like you said, they've got everyone. So everyone can see themselves in here. There's an older lady, there's a disabled person, there are multiple different nationalities. But the other thing that I will say about this is it's also very fun. Do you know what I mean? Like it is bright. People are smiling. People are happy. The colors, like you identified. Now, these colors are very soft. They're obviously associated with the environment, but it's a very fresh, because in Australia we associate green with Woolworths, the fresh food people. And so it looks very clean. The aesthetic is, like you said, this site is incredibly minimal. When you look at the information that's on here, there's only a tiny bit, but everything is hyperlinked. So you want to know more, you just click on it. And when you click on it, you don't get a lot. You just get the dot points, and you just get the most important thing. But the whole site is positive focused, and it's happy, and it makes you feel good, and it gives you hope that if you vote for these people, then your life is going to get better.
And I want to point this out here. The only point where a member of their parliament, which is Adam Bandt, their leader, is shown, he's walking with a volunteer. He's walking, and he's not the centerpiece. He's not even enlarged. It's like quite a small photo of him. It just goes to show, if you want to join us, you want to be part of us, then you really are part of us. We're not putting anyone on a pedestal. You're part of a winning team. You're included.
It's
blah, blah, blah.
about you. It's not about us. And it's about supporting a cause as opposed to a political party or a person. You know what I mean? So this is very much, when I look at this, I immediately think to myself, okay, what they've told the marketing company or the advertising company behind there is we want to attract young people. And this sort of market, and when you see it, see that visual of all the people, and all the colors, all of that is replicated across their entire social media network. So it's all consistent across. But the most important message is actually change is possible. That's a really good message. And they've actually hidden away a lot of the stuff that you would normally associate with the Greens. Because when you speak to a lot of people like our age or older, in terms of what they think of the Greens, the first thing that will come to mind, right, is climate change.
Yep.
Can you see climate change anywhere on that?
That's a good point. Well, it says no more
change.
It says no more coal and gas, but
No
yes,
more coal and gas.
that's it.
But that's very different from climate change. But if you don't mind, I don't know if you can get it back up. But if you go up there and you click on our plan, and then you go down to the election platform 2022. You go up to the top menu. So top right-hand corner, and click on our plan. There's a drop down.
I see take action. Maybe I need to widen this out a bit. No.
Are you on the site, or are you on the site? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the site.
Yep. So just scroll over our plan over to the left.
Oh, here. Sorry.
Yeah. And then go down to election platform 2022.
Yep.
Yeah. And if you just scroll down just a little bit, you'll notice they've actually got the campaign for 2024 there. And this is very interesting, because what they've done is you've clicked 2022 to see what they were talking about then. You can't find it. What pops up straight away is 2024's plan, which
says in the invasion of Gaza. That wasn't happening in 2022.
No. That's what I'm saying. This is actually their 2024 plan. But then if you scroll down even further, you can see the 2022, but it's dark. See how you can't really make out what's going on there? And this is all deliberate, because the number one right in the middle is tackling the climate crisis. Yeah. And they've come to realize, because they would have done focus groups, right? They would have found out that climate change is toxic. So they're trying to actually separate their brand right now from that terminology. Climate change, climate crisis. They don't want to go into 2024 focused on that. So that is why when you scroll back up, you get all these beautiful bright colors, all of these huge big tiles saying, hey, this is what we're focused on now. Forget the climate. That's 2022. It's in the dark. It's in the past. Don't worry about that.
And for people that can't see it, So freeze rents and interest rates, stop supermarket price gouging, stop Labor's coal and gas, end the invasion of Gaza, dental and mental health, and free uni and TAFE. All cost of living issues, a little bit of climate change, but it's more just focused on coal and gas, the evil polluters that they would frame it as. Stop supermarket price gouging, which is all about, big corporations are ripping us off, which goes back to the first page. But the thing that, it drives me nuts, right? This is so professional. It's so well done, but I can see the psychological manipulation that is happening.
Oh, 100%.
Yes, because you look at this, cost of living is out of control. First thing, big corporations are making record profits while ripping you off.
Yeah.
You're working harder than ever, yet 1 in 3 big corporations pay no tax. This is just such emotive language. We can't keep supporting the same two parties and expecting a different result. Which, but they say we have got a plan to make it happen. All right, so you click the link, we fight for you, and it takes you to the next page. Again, the same sort of messaging in nice colors. It looks professional, as you said before. It's clean. Big corporations are ripping you off. You're not alone. And it basically just repeats very similar points to what it had on the first page. I'm still looking for the plan. It keeps saying we've got a plan. Where's the plan? I'm still looking for it. And you scroll down. There's a little bit more. With our big corporations tax, we'll raise $514 billion over the decade and use it to tackle the cost of living, which sounds fantastic. But how are you going to do it? Doesn't say.
No.
So let's click the link again. We'll click it. And again, you just come. I don't know why the page is playing up. But for some reason, there's some gremlins in the page at the moment. They must know what they were talking about them. But normally this has got nice images and everything.
Yeah.
But the point that I'm trying to make is you keep clicking on all these links but you never find the plan. It just comes and says, oh, we're going to tax big corporations $514 billion. Well, how are you going to do that? It doesn't say how they're going to do it. They're going to use that money to pay for all these fabulous things like free dental and free university and free TAFE. So someone that's just skimming over this, it all sounds fantastic. We've got a plan. We're going to do this. This is the benefits of our plan. They never, ever mention what the plan is. They don't detail what the plan is. But you're clicking through these links. Psychologically, you're getting to the point where you're like, oh, I can't be bothered clicking any more links. It looks like there's some information here. It's all detailed. They must have a plan. And you just go along with it.
Yeah, I think the average time that people stay on a website is about 37 seconds.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're hitting that bulk of people. You and I, and perhaps people who are undecided, because I learned in my research for today's show that undecided people are actually more critical thinkers that want access to more information. And they'll often take that information and then they will decide generally on one policy. I'm going to pick this person because that's going to affect my life. And that one policy is much more likely with undecided voters to be economically focused as opposed to socially focused.
Yeah,
it was very interesting. The other interesting thing is that they're playing silly buggers with the stats when it comes to people who are undecided, because I'd never realized that there was another category called the politically disengaged. I would have just assumed that they came under undecided, but no, they're different categories, and they make up at least 20% of the population. So those sort of figures make much more sense to me, because when I think about undecided people and people who are making decisions on the day as they walk into the polling booth or the night before looking at the website like this, 30 to 40% of the population, I think, is much more accurate than the figure that's constantly given on ABC and everybody else, that it's only 10%. In saying that, even if it is only 10% people that are undecided, that is clearly from the figures that we were talking about before, that's enough to swing an election. So that's why these voters are so important. And that's why I can't get my head around, and I know we haven't been there yet, how pathetic the websites, and I'm sorry, they really are. And once we get there, you'll see why.
Well, let's have a look. This is the Labor. This. We've just seen the Greens, and I know people that are listening on the audio, they can't see this, but go back and watch the video if you can. We've seen the Green. This is Labor, which blew me away. This blew me away because normally Labor's pretty slick with their marketing. This was the worst website out of all.
Yeah, I everything about this website is wrong. And look, the first thing that hits me, and I know it's probably more of a personal thing, but there is actually psychology behind it. That particular color red is what, I hate this word, but it is very problematic in advertising and marketing. People would normally avoid using that red, particularly now, because Indigenous communities find that color red offensive. Of course, that color red is also associated with communism, which I think harks back to the early days of Labor. Perhaps I'm wrong there, but it seems like there is a bit of a link there. And it is also something that is generally associated with alert and alarm and offence. Or when I say offence, I mean more like an anger response. So that within itself is alarming for me. The other thing is this giant head here. This is so wrong. It is so wrong.
I went easy. He's not even smiling.
He's not even smiling. He looks a little bit like he's just, I don't know, done a massive fart and he's gotten away with it, or thought he's gotten away with it. Like, it's a bit smug, that look. But also, he is not, to me, he is not the Labor Party. The Labor Party is separate from him. So he is the Prime Minister. So the office of the Prime Minister has its own website. That's where an image like that would be much more appropriate. And you can see how that, sorry.
Let's see how basic it is, though, because you click on the Our People tab, and it's got all the list of all their members of Parliament. No photos. You have to actually move the cursor over and look at this one here. It's not even framed correctly. Yeah. I mean, like, you wouldn't even spend more than 10 seconds on this website and just go, these guys are not serious.
Well, because you and I work in that space, like what and how this could be improved. The other thing that if you just want to share screen again, it's even more alarming. If you click on the Labor site, go up to the top again, and they've got our plan.
Yeah.
I don't know, click on that. Look at that. Just scroll down. That is just a whole paragraph of text. And it is literally, I'm not joking, it's cut and pasted from Word. And the only thing that they've done in terms of innovation is that they've hyperlinked some of the words.
Yeah.
Now, compare and contrast that with the Greens. And also, Old Mate stays on the page no matter where you go.
Yep.
And
Well, how significant is this? Because Labor are leaking votes. So we mentioned that they're down to 32% of the primary vote. That vote's got to go somewhere, and it seemingly is going to the Greens.
it is going to go to the Greens, 100%.
The Greens are just eating Labor's lunch. And you could potentially make the argument that is based purely on their social media presence and the website, because a lot of voters are just, pre-election, jump online, have a quick look. They see the Labor thing and they go, I can't stand this Albanese guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas you go on the Greens website, they don't have their members of parliament on there. It's just about you.
Yes. And again, I go back to that horrible saying, where am I? If someone's looking for like themselves, and also anyone under the age of, I'm going to say maybe 35, would find this website difficult to navigate because it is formatted based on formats from maybe about 10 years ago. It actually reminds me, particularly when you're talking about big groups of text that are hyperlinked, it reminds me of my Substack page. And it shouldn't. It really shouldn't, because this is a multi-million-dollar machine that has been around for over 100 years and has access to the best and the brightest. And there's no excuse for this. Is the worst thing, honestly. We've moved across maybe 5 different parties, and I wrote down and I ranked them, and this was at the bottom on all metrics.
I want to hear your rankings because I'm really interested to see what you'll come up with. But before we get there, maybe let's go through some of the other parties. The next one I want to bring up is probably another very professional website, which is surprisingly the One Nation website.
Yeah.
But the thing that just, this drove me insane when I was part of the party as well. It's just all about Pauline. This is just a cult of personality, this website. There's some great images and videos that are happening. It looks all very professional. But as you said, where you said it's about you, this is just about Pauline. It's a homage to Pauline. And there is nothing even about members of her team. She's got people elected all throughout the country, but it's just all about her. And it's just a complete cult of personality.
100%. And one of the things I wrote down, initial reaction, was what happens to this party when Pauline leaves this party? She herself, by creating this cult of personality, she is sealing the demise of the One Nation party. Because once Pauline Hanson's no longer around, then there's One Nation will not exist. They need to do a complete rebranding if they want to continue past the Pauline Hanson era. The other thing that I find highly irritating is the video. I don't like that. If I'm okay with when you land on a website to have a video like that, but what people will generally do now is give you the option to pause the video because it's very distracting. And on her site, it does take up maybe half the page, and it is looped really short. There's not a lot to see. It's about I'm going to say 8 or 9 second loop. So it's not like there's anything visually. Once you've seen it once, you've seen it, and it's then just irritating because you don't have the capacity to pause it and scroll around. But as for visuals, again, this just completely kills the Labor side. Again,
as I said, it's still professional. It's professional, 100%. But the messaging is correct. Is incorrect because when you're focusing so much on Pauline, you're not focusing on what you're going to be doing for people. Yes, you can talk to a crowd and talk to people walking around and have a smile on her face, but what is she going to do for you? Where are the policies? I know there are policies. There is a policy page on the website, but it should be front and center. As we said, when you scroll down from the Greens website, the first thing is cost of living. Big corporations are ripping you off. We've got a plan for you. I mean, this is just, let's love Pauline, and if you're going to vote for us, you're basically just voting for Pauline.
Yeah, her image is repeated across the website in almost every single promo, call out, take action, email. Everything has got her picture. Even talkback radio. But one thing that I didn't notice on first glance, but I've just noticed now. Perhaps one of the most famous things that One Nation has ever done is their videos. I don't know if you've seen them. The cartoons on YouTube.
Yeah,
they're right down the bottom.
Yeah.
A couple of those have gone viral. They've got millions of views, a couple of them. I know this sounds ridiculous to us because we're politically engaged, and probably to your audience as well. But for the general Joe Blow on the street, who's completely disengaged, completely undecided, I would think that if they saw that video, they'd probably go, oh, shit, she makes those videos. I love those videos. She's getting my vote. Like, I know it sounds ridiculous, but people have voted for people for lesser reasons than that. And I don't think they should be down the bottom. They should be pretty easy to find. But in terms of visuals, this is, again, you've gone back to really soft colors, like the soft blues. There's some softer oranges. There's a lot of use of, like, see how there's a lot of that white space. So that creates the text pops out a little bit more. And
but you are correct about the video. It is irritating, and it's quite abrasive as well.
Now that I've pointed it out, yes, it's just I spent a lot of time like just clicking on it because I'm like a robot, like I'm used to social media, and I'm like, oh, if I just click on it, it'll stop. No, it doesn't stop. And it's not really saying anything. It's just, again, like you said, it's all about Pauline. She's adopted the Malcolm Turnbull leather jacket, which I'm happy to see. Maybe she'll get some mileage out of that. She actually does look good in it. But I also do like that, like the Greens website. They've got the mailing list up front, but again, it's not. The messaging is very different. It's basically saying, "Give us your details," which is exactly what the Labor one was, except the Labor was even worse because they're asking for money.
Donate,
before they even ask for your details. Like,
that's interesting. I'm just going back to the Greens site. Is there anything about donations on there? Oh, there is a donate thing, but it's not overwhelming. I mean, it's just there.
Yeah, no, it's just obviously, the reality is the political parties do run on donations.
It's very important. You have to put it there. I mean, I even do it on this podcast with Buy Me a Coffee. Like, you'd be stupid not to. But when it's the first thing, like on the Labor website, it's just.
But also, it's like they're like it's right in the center, and it says "Donate Now" on a big red tile. And if you actually on the Greens, what they do again, it's like you were saying before, it's about the wording. So the wording this time is not, well, it does say donate, but above that it says get involved. Again, it's about you. And there's options. You can volunteer if you want. You can join, or you can donate. That's a very different call to action than donate. Right in the front and center, the moment you land on the page, that just stinks of desperation, and it is also just it's distasteful, and people don't respond to that anymore. Not anymore.
One of the other ones is the Liberal Party. Now, I don't really. This is kind of middle of the ground for me. I mean, I think you've got Dutton there. Okay, fair enough. He's the leader. He's at least doing half a smile compared to Albanese not smiling, but it's got a message on there: get Australia back on track, read our plan. Okay, fair enough. You click on that, and it's just a lot of text again, as you said, not many images, but there's a little bit of substance here. There's, if you really want to take the time to read it, you can, I suppose.
I did read it, and I didn't like it because. So what's happening, what they've done is they chose to focus in most of the categories. What they would do is talk about what the Labor government is doing wrong. before they give what they're going to do right. And I just don't think that that's the right way to present a plan or a way to move forward. And again, if we go back to the Greens, and I hate going back to the Greens, but if you go back to them, it's the framing is very different again.
Yeah.
And their plan is vague deliberately. Political parties, mostly their plans are vague, but it hits all the right notes and it is much more accessible than this. I just don't understand how in 2024 these political parties, particularly these big powerful ones, are still presenting blocks of text. That's just, it's not done anymore in that matter at all.
Well, what I want to point out as well is back to their main page, you just have to scroll down. And it's got the latest here. Now, it doesn't have it there, so they obviously have been updating this. But when I looked this last night, one of these tiles here just had statement. That was it.
Yeah.
So they hadn't even, I mean, I would look at this and go, is this necessary? If you constantly have to update all these articles, get rid of them.
Yeah,
because you're not going to, if you're running an election campaign, you're not going to have someone, working on the website constantly, updating all these articles. And that's what I quite like about the Greens one. I know we keep coming back to them, but we said that they're the best. It doesn't have any of that.
No,
it's just policies, what we're going to do for you, and that's all. That's it. It's slick. You don't have to update it all the time. It's just there. It looks nice, blah, blah, blah. But the Liberal Party, it just seems that you're always going to have someone on there posting articles, and that's very time consuming. It takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of resources, and I just don't think it's necessary.
It's boring. That was my initial reaction to that. Their website.
That's what I mean. If people want to see updates, they go to social media, right?
Well, so if they've actually got their links to their social media, but again, if we go back to Pauline, one of the things that she does on her front landing page is she's got her live Twitter feed, and it ticks over live. I mean, It is extraordinary to me that the One Nation Party is more advanced in their presentation of social media than the Liberal and Labor Party. But again, it's just been genuinely surprising. And because as someone, like I said at the outset, that's more focused locally, but then internationally, I just had the assumption or the belief that, with the talented people we have in this nation and the number of people that are online every day, that the websites would be like whiz bang. I thought the Greens, that sort of style and that sort of kind of being up to date in how websites and social media is designed and done today would be spread across all of the parties. And I went to the Greens first with the idea, thinking that the rest of them would get better, not worse. And I was genuinely shocked with.
Well, you've hit on a good point, because when I was briefly on the One Nation state executive, very briefly, and we were thinking about doing a rebranding, the first thing I did was think, all right, let's have a look at what the other parties are doing well. And I went straight to their websites to see what was working and what was not working, and basically do what we're doing right now, analyzing the presentation and the messaging and all that sort of thing. Why isn't there someone within Labor or, to a lesser extent, the Liberal Party, looking at the Greens website and say, hey, they're eating our lunch, like, we've got to keep up? I mean, surely it can't take much to hire a company to do all this for you. It doesn't have to be in-house. I mean, obviously the Greens have gone somewhere to have this professionally done. Why aren't all the parties doing that?
I would think that they would have at least communication officers, and I would be surprised if they didn't have a full-time social media person, particularly the Labor and Liberal Party, and actually I'm sure the Greens do as well. So, I mean, then the question really becomes like, what is that person doing? Or what is that team doing? What is their communication team doing? And I would think that perhaps this complacency and this nonchalance towards their website and some of their social media platforms more generally is being directed from the top. I'm not sure if like the Labour Party, Liberal Party, maybe still run by like a slightly different generation that are like, well, that's just for the kids. They don't realise that the kids are now grown up and they're all into their 40s and 50s that are doing social media, and that it is actually not just for the kids. And the other thing is, I think that when you have like a vague sort of communications team, what could be happening and what I think is happening is they're much more focused on communication within the traditional channels. So they're probably spending a lot of their time trying to tee up interviews and working on sound bites. And they are all, to their credit, the major parties are all pretty active on like Twitter or X. So they might be spending a lot of time trying to craft those tweets on a day-by-day basis. But they have enough money, and you and I both know how long it would take to completely rework a website to a point where it is at least at the level of the Greens, and it's probably not as long as what most people think who don't work in technology. If you sat down and really committed yourself, it would take a maximum, I think, maybe 4 weeks to completely redo these websites to the.
Hey, mate, I would argue that the Commanding the Narrative website's better than the Labor Party website.
I was going to say that before.
I did that over a few nights on Squarespace. I mean, surely.
For goodness sake.
Graham's putting a lot of comments in the chat. Hello, Graham. He always makes some great comments. He says, Victor makes a great point. People in 2024 do not want to read a bunch of text. The message needs to be short and sharp with links to more details for those that want it. Now, that is exactly what the Greens have done. Now, I want to get to your ranking because I'm really
on ahead with the links. What that does is, again, it goes back to your point, Stephen, about the Greens saying this is about you. So the assumption that Labor and Liberal is making is that everyone that goes to their websites wants to read everything about how wonderful they are and what they're going to do. And that's why you get those giant blocks of text, whereas the Greens have taken a different tack. They're like, we're just going to do like a highlight tour through here. And if Stephen or Victor or Graham are interested in this, then they can click through and they can read it. But everybody else, because they're only going to be here for about 30 seconds, we're just going to give them the highlights tour.
But it's also, and I kind of touched on this before, it's a psychological mind game by having these links there, and they're multiple links. Not only do you have to click on the first page, you then have to click on the next page, and then you have to click on the next page. It's saying that there's substance there when there is no substance. As I said, when you click on their cost of living policy and they've got this big plan, it never ever states anything about the plan. It just says that they're going to raise $514 billion. I don't know how. It doesn't state how they're going to do it.
Sounds good, though.
Sounds fantastic. Sounds amazing. I mean, I even agree with it. Yeah, go tax the big companies that are not paying tax and we can have better services. I even agree with that.
Yeah.
But, and you know, what's odd, and we can probably do this another time. We're probably not going to have time to do this today. If you go on the One Nation page and look at their policies and look at the Greens policies, they're very, very similar. They almost have the same policies apart from some exceptions. You know, obviously One Nation focus on COVID and all those sorts of things. And obviously they're not supporting the Palestinians in Gaza or anything that the Greens are doing. But when it comes to cost of living, taxing big corporations, bringing back manufacturing, I mean, they're both the same on both party sides. I mean, their approach is slightly different. You know, One Nation want to bring back manufacturing through coal and gas, whereas the Greens want to bring it back through renewables. But there's similar focus there. There's similar issues.
Yeah, I think that this is almost like a global phenomenon that is very strange, where you're seeing people that are like I was saying before, traditional left and traditional right, which have kind of changed a lot because we've got the new left and the new right that are in power right now. And what's happening is they're going back, and those two sides are actually merging into one. And so you've got like almost like this uni party in the middle, which is very neoliberal and has very, very similar ideas. It's just about what the destination is. It's just the journey to their destination that's a little bit different. Whereas the people on the either ends, their policies and their drives are very different from the people in the middle, but quite similar. And that was one of my biggest disappointments. And I don't want to go back there because we've discussed it before, but during COVID was the fact that me, being a traditional lefty, was completely all by myself. And I made alliances and met some amazing people on what would be considered, in Australia anyway, the far right, which everywhere else in the world is probably more centre, but what people would refer to as the far right. And that's been an amazing experience. But I don't know how much longer they're going to let that happen, Stephen, because the idea, like we're seeing, because we spoke about this with Trump before at the start of the podcast, the idea about these far left and these far rights, and again, I hate this terminology, but at least people can capture what I'm trying to talk about, joining together and coming together and morphing. The big parties do not want that, because that sort of situation can lead to a situation where you have a genuine third alternate party, and they, no matter whether you're in America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, England, that is always killed. It has to be the traditional two parties. And we can talk about One Nation and Greens and all that, but it's still very fragmented. If those fragments were to come together, then that's trouble. And so, yeah, I think I agree with you for now. I think that a lot of the policies are very similar. It's just the, like you said, the way to achieve them is a little bit different. But that kind of coming together and that similarity, I think they're going to try and kill that pretty soon.
I want to quickly touch on the final two just before we get to your ranking. I'm really interested with your ranking, but this is the Nationals. I mean, I think this is just typical Nationals for me. You know, they fly under the radar. They do things, you know, pretty well. Nothing over the top. I mean, I don't have too many criticisms with the National one, but it's not as good as the Greens, and potentially it's not as good as One Nation's site, but it's not too bad. I mean, I think it does the job.
Yeah, well, it kills Labor again, which is surprising because it is quite a small party. The one thing that again, they're very focused on who their current members are, which, you know, when you're talking about a party website, that could be a little bit further down. But the main thing that I noticed here is on the landing page, you've got latest news and you've got 18th of April, 2023. This is... This is what I was talking about with the Liberal page. Like, you don't go there. Don't have this. Here it is. Okay, April, exactly. Yeah. So she don't even go there. Yeah. Just delete this. If you're going to have news, just make it a link like the Greens did. Don't show the world, don't show the electorate that you don't give a fuck. And that's exactly what this is doing to me. This is saying to me, look, we don't really care because we think that our voters don't check the website. And we don't really need to go after new voters. We're just going to have this here because it's got an email link, it's got a donate button, and it's got some policy stuff. But again, the policy stuff is like COVID era. And you can link to emails of our team. This is just...
One thing I want to point out, who do the Nationals represent?
Well, traditionally, I would imagine that they would represent the country.
And farmers? Where are the farmers on this page? Where's the images of farmers? It's just it's all Little Proud. I mean, it's all the members. Yeah. This is just a news page. Yeah. That's all it is. So I mean, as I said, I mean, I don't have too many criticisms, but that's one thing I would address. You got to have more, follow the lead of the Greens. And show what the farmers look like, show where they're living, show the issues that are important to country communities. Have that on there. I mean, I know you want to promote Little Proud and all the members of the Nationals and everything like that, but it's got to, as you said in the beginning, it's got to be about you. When you go on there, does this party represent me? What can they do for me? So I think that's really, really important. Something that they definitely need to address. Maybe we need to get paid for this stuff, mate. We need to.
I'll tell you what, I was thinking before, if these political parties were actually like, if they gave a shit and they were serious about creating, we're doing a lot of work here that people, we should really be getting paid about $180 an hour right now, because that's how much these consultants, who, believe it or not, these would have passed through a consultant. That's what blows my mind.
Well, good point, because this is the final page, and this is a party that has just gone through a rebranding. This is the Libertarian Party. This is their website.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
they've got a new logo. I mean, they can't even agree on the logo. The New South Wales part of the Libertarians just put through a motion where they said they're rejecting the logo, which I have deemed the Sultana logo, because it looks like the old.
I see it. Yeah, right. Okay, yeah.
But the thing that screams out is the color for me on this. I mean, I feel like I'm in Brisbane with the maroon and the yellow.
It's very Brisbane Broncos. It's exactly their color scheme.
Yeah,
it's okay to be close in color scheme, but you don't want to be exactly the same. And I'm pretty sure they're exactly the same colors as the Brisbane Broncos. This one is pretty clean. Yeah, it's pretty basic. It's obvious to me from the out that they didn't have a lot of money for the website, but I think it's much more modern. I actually ranked this above both the Liberal and Labor Party, just because I found the navigation on this website in particular like super easy. I found this really easy to work my way around. There's no videos. It's not, like you said, it's just like a basic page. You can scroll up and down. You can find about principles, policies, people, and also you can find out about more broadly what libertarians are, as opposed to what their party is. I don't like the visual of the two.
They love talking about themselves. They just love it. But one thing I'll point out is
delightful, right? Or every libertarian.
You look at the national page, and then you come to states. I think this is important to have all the states represented. But you click on New South Wales, and the look is completely different. This is yellow and black. There's no logo on there, and I mentioned there's conflict about the logo and everything on there. But it's almost like you're looking at a different party.
Yeah, they need some continuity there. That's wrong. You can't do that. That's very confusing. I would, if I wasn't paying attention, which was most of the time, and I did that, what you just did, I would assume that I've clicked the wrong link. And I would probably, no, I'm 100% serious, because in general, like as people that are watching, right, most people have multiple screens now. And so your attention is actually divided to start with, and then you add in a phone, it's even more divided. So when you're clicking through like that and something like that happens, it's actually incredibly jarring, but particularly for younger people. And I would think that, like me, they would just assume that they've clicked a wrong link. If they need to find something and they need to stick to it, I actually don't mind their logo, although I can't really see Tasmania. Not that that's really an issue for me, but
well, the continuity is important. Where, as you said, and we keep doing this, we keep going back to the Greens, but I guess that's the whole point of what we're talking about.
Everyone's on message, and that's actually true across all of their platforms as well. I don't know if I mentioned that, but all of the visuals, all the colors, all the interaction stuff is, whether you're on TikTok, the website, X. I don't have Facebook, so I don't know about Facebook, but I would assume it's the same. It is exactly the same. And that's great. The other thing that, just to quickly go back to the Nationals, correct me if I'm wrong here, but aren't they one of the oldest political parties in Australia, if not the oldest?
The Labor is the oldest, but formerly they were the Country Party, which goes back quite a way.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that they don't choose to focus on that.
I mean, as I said, I think the layout and the colors and all that sort of stuff is okay, but they need some work on their messaging.
They need a creative, because they need to be something that's different, like you said. They need to inform their potential voters what makes them different from the Liberal Party, and it takes more than just making yourself green and yellow, which, by the way, the colors are very similar to the greens, which is very confusing as well. But I think when it comes to their base, like you said, so you said that they're maybe a lot more of a country party and farmer party. I think kind of working with that heritage is important. And that sounds to some people that are not really in the know like that's a bit boring. But when you look at every single luxury brand on the planet, they will all tell you when they were established, because it creates in the mind of the consumer the fact that this brand is solid, it's reliable, it's durable, it's classic, it's got heritage. And just to give a little bit of a commercial example, Country Road over the last 12 months tried to reposition themselves because they wanted to move away from the country association with their brand. So they went towards more of a slick sort of fashion thing, and it's completely backfired. And they're working their way back into that. So sometimes it's good to embrace the heritage, because that is a point of advantage for them. And to certain young people that are more kind of conservative leaning, I think that would appeal to them, that heritage.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Now let's get to your ranking. How do you rank these sites from best to worst?
Well, I don't think it's going to be any surprise. Last was Labor. I was incredibly disappointed with that website.
I was blown away. I wasn't just disappointed. I was shocked. I was like, this can't be their site. There must be another one floating around somewhere.
Yeah, it looks like a Year 12 project. That's the only way to describe it. And I've just noticed that they've got a shop on there too, which is anyway. No, absolutely. This is someone's afterthought. They're not taking this job. They're not taking the website seriously. They're clearly not trying to attract a young voter in the online space, and that's very interesting, because that's the direct opposite of the Green site. And it's very interesting to me that they would ignore the younger market. And like I said before, the online people are now 50 and 60 and under. It's not teenagers anymore. They need to realize that most people in Australia get their news from TikTok and Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is not that's not going to cut it. It's just embarrassing, actually. And they need to take his face off there. And on every single page, no matter where you click, he's still staring.
Or at least do a different photo.
Yeah, no, I just say no, get rid of him completely. He's got his own page. He's got the Office of the Prime Minister. You know, he's got his own Twitter account. Let him do his thing. But this is supposed to be about the party and what the plan is and what they're about. And anyway, it's not the Anthony Albanese page. Number 4, I did put the Nationals in 4th just because I was I just couldn't believe that they were leaving news stories up from 1, 2, and 3 years on the landing page. It's okay to have that stuff, but hide it in the back. Don't put it on the front. And the other thing was, I didn't really like it. I thought they really needed to focus on their history a lot more and use that as a strength. Then with the Liberal one, because I just felt like it was, I know this is a bit cliche, but I just felt like it was the most boring. I also found their drop-down menus very confusing at the top and a little bit schizophrenic, like they come and they go, and then, but everything about it was just very, I don't know, 2004 maybe.
One thing I'll point out about the Liberals, and this is a common theme going back to what the Greens are doing, there's nothing about who they represent. It's just about their team. This is the team. You can just scroll through and look, I mean, they're nice, clear images. You can see exactly who these people are. You can see what shadow ministries they have, etc., etc., etc. But they're just politicians. At the end of the day, there's no image of anyone apart from Liberals on here.
Yeah.
And, I mean, going back to the Greens, that's what they do very well.
Yeah, that's 100% true. This is like a business website.
Yeah.
Or like I would probably put it down to like a real estate agency, like meet the team sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it is. And then I did Pauline Hanson's. See, this is exactly what you're saying just now, right? I did it. Instead of calling it One Nation, I just went to call it Pauline Hanson's One Nation.
Well, technically that's what the name
that
is.
What it's called. Well, they need to stop that, because if they, otherwise the party, like I said, will just disappear when she does.
Mate, well, that's what Mark Latham was trying to do. Just rebrand it One Nation, and look what happened to him. They cut his head off. So
but no, this was actually pretty slick. I think she's got a pretty good online team of volunteers. I'm sure. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 people getting paid, but I think most are volunteers. And she,
I would say they would have outsourced it.
Yeah, that's good. I just wish that they'd put what they're famous for a little bit more central and remove the Pauline Hanson. But that's a larger issue, really. And the video.
And look, promote Malcolm a lot more. There's so many people that I know
Malcolm's
that support
really
One
lovely.
Nation, purely because of Malcolm Roberts. And look, Pauline's not coming up for election in the next election, but Malcolm is. He should be front and center for all the great work that he's doing. But there's a photo there where you scroll down. I mean,
but no name, no link.
Yeah, and it's with Pauline. He's standing beside Pauline. So that was the whole problem with the party. Everything came back to Pauline.
Yeah,
and
Malcolm is very strong. So I've met him. He's a fantastic public speaker. He's very driven and very genuine.
And look, some people might say, "Oh, he's somewhere else on there is a page dedicated to him." Blah blah blah. People are not going to click that far in and find it. It needs to be front and center.
Well, I don't know how to find it. Where is it?
I don't know. I didn't even bother. I'm preparing for a podcast. I'm researching for a podcast, and I didn't even bother.
Oh, that was the other thing. They put the menu on the right. No one. So basically, when people they've done a lot of research on eye tracking when people log onto websites, and the way you need to think about it is when most people log in, they actually come in and they do a Z. So they go immediately to top left, which is why on 99% of websites, the drop-down menu or the menu is on the left-hand side. And then we automatically scan across the top of the screen, which is why that visual, particularly on the Labor website, is so jarring as opposed to the Greens visual, which is so strong. And then we kind of track down, but we are always just naturally going back to the left. So the decision for them to put that on the right is... unless they're changed their mind and now they're targeting an Asian audience, because the Chinese go top right first, because obviously when they read, they go the opposite. So maybe they're going for the Chinese. Maybe, I don't know. That's a bit controversial. Okay, moving on.
Okay, well, we're already at an hour and a half, but I do want to touch on this because we've highlighted that what the Greens are doing effectively well. We've talked about that they've got some policies that sound amazing, they sound fantastic, but there's no substance behind it. There's no. They say they've got a plan. Where's the plan? We don't see it. They're also talking about getting rid of coal and gas. Well, people that listen to this podcast will know what that will do to the country and how damaging that could be. There's a lot of focus on housing. Now they want to freeze rents. I think that would be incredibly devastating to the economy, because they're assuming that people that own properties are rich and entitled and have huge amounts of money, when in reality a lot of investors are just mom and pop investors. They might have saved up for a little unit here or there. They're not incredibly wealthy. If you're going to target them by freezing rents, then they're going to have to sell their properties, and that would even be worse for renters, because then they have nowhere to live. That's the whole reason why you have negative gearing and those sorts of benefits, is because the government can't provide housing on its own. It needs investors to provide housing for people and fund the housing and buy the housing and maintain the housing as well, which is incredibly important. And the consequence of that is that people living there have to pay rent. Now, if you freeze those rents, then how are those property owners meant to pay their mortgage, meant to pay the strata, meant to pay all the other bills that come along with it? So I just think that yeah, it sounds amazing when they say to renters, hey, we're going to freeze rents. And if you're renting, you think that's fantastic. I mean, now I know that I'm safe. I know that my rents are not going to be extravagant. And that's a great policy, but they're not looking at the whole picture and how that would really damage the economy. And they're a little bit disingenuous as well. They had a figure here where they're talking about the housing crisis and freezing rents. And they were saying that rents have increased, or rents increased $3 billion collectively during 2022, 2023. But they don't say that that was during the COVID rebound. So during COVID, rents took a nosedive because they weren't bringing in people from overseas, and the demand dropped, the supply increased, so rents decreased. When they started letting people back into the country after COVID, that's when rents shot up again, just to match where they'd been previously. So it's, I think that's a really disingenuous figure that they've put across, but people are not going to dig into that. They're just going to see it. They're going to go, wow, that sounds fantastic. Let's get on board.
But again, because I don't know, I hate to comment in depth on things that I'm not across. So I thought while you were giving that excellent explanation there, I would just click on the link. And again, it's just so vague from the Greens and what their actual plan is. But I really, like, I'm going back many years now, but I did do basic micro and macroeconomics at university. And it just seems to me like this is, as you kind of touched on there, just an issue of supply and demand. And the Liberals, as much as I didn't really like their website, they did have a very detailed, I read that text, a very detailed housing plan, which is the direct opposite of the Greens. So the Greens basically, and we spoke about most of the sites being very vague. The Liberal one it spells it out very, very, very clearly. And I was very impressed actually by their housing plan, just because it just seems really obvious to me that when you allow 750,000 people into a country in the middle of a housing crisis, and you say that that's because we're making up from the COVID years, it's still, even if we did consistently go through like under Morrison and kept his figures going throughout, it still wouldn't have equaled 750. Obviously, this coming year, they had a goal to reduce that down to 400, and actually the goal was 315 initially. They've now had to put that back up to 450 because they've already let in 388. And this is unsustainable. And what's really important here is that a lot of people don't seem to realize that those figures that often exclude international students. So these are just people that are immigrating here, and some of them are short-term, but most of them will be long-term. So the figures are actually higher.
But that's why the Greens have to be vague, because they don't want to talk about immigration.
They can't talk about immigration. Absolutely not. Not with a flashback, or sorry, a flash screen like they're landing their homepage. They can't have an image like that and then turn around and say that we actually need to have a conversation about immigration, because that, this is the great replacement theory, if you want, in the US, but that is a large part of their market as well, is to capture those people who are looking for the Australian dream and hope and change and all of these things. That is one of their angles that makes them different from Liberal traditionally, but also I think increasingly Labor, is that they want more people here and more diverse, and that's definitely one of their selling points. But
Graham's just put another comment. He said, in other words, the Greens can cherry pick what policies they want to push forward.
Yeah. Absolutely. But I think one of the things, if we want to be, because we've been really complimentary of the Greens, but one of the things that I did just want to, and I kind of brought this up before, but I think it's an important point, is just how quickly and how completely the Greens have dropped the climate change issue. And I'm not one suggesting that need to pick that issue back up again, but I did a little bit of research before today looking into why it is, particularly on that front page, that you don't even see that phrase. And you think back, you couldn't go like 2-3 minutes without hearing climate change back in 2022. Like it was all the teals spoke about. But what's happening?
I can tell you off the top of my head, if you look at, there's websites out there, I can't think of the name of them off the top of my head, but they'll poll a whole bunch of people and they say, what are your 3 top issues? And then they put that in a percentage and they rank, the top issues. Cost of living, housing affordability, immigration are always at the top. Climate change and the environment are always about 10%. So they know from the polling that people just don't give a damn about these issues. Yes, they're front and center, and the policies that are happening are damaging the country, but people don't want to focus on it. They don't really care whether the earth is warming because of coal and gas and all these other issues, and they don't really care. On the flip side of that, they don't care that about the renewables rollout. It's out of sight, out of mind. They're more concerned about cost of living, paying the bills, putting food on their table, affording the rent, buying a house, those sorts of issues. So what you're saying about the Greens moving away from the climate change issue just aligns with that polling. And that's what a lot of this stuff is driven by. It's driven by detailed polling, and they're just moving along with it. And you think that they're smart and they're amazing for coming up with these strategies. It's purely based on the numbers.
But it just goes to highlight, Stephen, just how shallow that all of those arguments were. So
look at the flip side. The libertarians, and I have big problems with the libertarian parties, as people know watching this podcast, but they will always advocate what they believe in. They could care less about the polls. They just want to push their ideology, whereas the Greens and the Teals and other parties, they'll just move in the wind based on what they think is going to get them elected.
And so when you talk about polls, the Australian government, sometimes they outsource and they want to look at and find out what the Australian public are really concerned about. So they do a lot of in-house stuff and get external people to do it for them. They did one in April this year, and they compared it to April 2022. Climate change in 2022. They got to the respondents got to rank their top 3 priorities, and they gave them 15 options. So in 2022, climate change came in at number 5 out of 15. So it was top 5. In 2024, it slipped down to 8. And I think that what we're seeing with the Greens is the reality that there is now a lot of stigma around climate change, because in over the last 2 years, what we've seen is a lot of the predictions and a lot of the forecasts, none of them are coming true, but also it's that we're not even tracking towards those projections coming through. And, when you talk about the Paris Accords or the Kyoto protocols and all of these things from many, many years ago that you and I would remember, so a lot of those things are expiring, and a lot of the predictions that they said would happen, a lot of them, I don't know if you remember, they were focused on 2020. So this is going to happen by 2020. This is going to happen by 2030. So what people are doing is they're looking around finally and saying, holy shit, I think we've been hoodwinked. And I actually think that the climate change turn itself is toxic. And I think it's actually going to disappear. And I just wanted to kind of add a little bit of evidence to that. I was looking up, there's a artificial or AI that we use in academia, and it's really good for tracking like trends. And climate change is no longer tracking. It's now about environmental sustainability. So they've taken 2 terms that you and I and other people used to talk about a lot in the 90s and the early 2000s in terms of like protecting the environment and being sustainable, and now they've merged those 2. And I think what we're going to see moving forward is that terminology, environmental sustainability, coming through. And when I logged onto the Green site and I saw that it was climate change was completely dropped and they had just focused on no more coal and gas, and they start to bring out the word environment again, this is, God, it just really does not piss you off, because this is like, to use the terminology that everyone's using right now, this is the hill these people were prepared to die on. This was a crisis. This was something that if we didn't act, their grandkids were going to be killed. This is what the teals and the greens, they ran on that and have run on that for so long, or at least the last 10 years anyway. And now to log in and to see that there's not a single mention, it's like, I don't understand why people don't see the hypocrisy and just how vain and like narrow that this is. A couple of focus groups, it starts to drop down to 8th and 10th in the list of importance and becomes a little bit more politically toxic and volatile. They just drop it and they're on to the next thing.
But here's the thing I really want to point out about the Greens, because they started off as an environmental party, and with Bob Brown and in Tasmania, and pushing back against the Franklin Dam and all those issues. But somewhere along the line, around the early 90s, they merged with the Socialist Party of Australia, with Lee Rhiannon, who actually I was speaking to someone on the phone today who went to school with Lee Rhiannon. They confirmed that yes, she was a communist and her parents were the heads of the Communist Party. And when she left Parliament, she even wrote this article on the Greens website. This article here, she said, yes, the parents of a few of us, and not just her, but a few of the people that got into the Greens were in the Communist Party, but so what? The attacks then are not dissimilar from what I and sections of the Greens experience today. As a 16-year-old, the lessons I learned in 1968 have stuck with me. Organize, involve people in the campaign, build allies, and don't be put off by bullying, insults, and the McCarthyist tactics of right-wing politicians and media. So she admits, yes, we were in the Communist Party, but she doesn't go to say that that was bad or that there was anything wrong with that. She's just basically saying, yeah, we learned a lot from that. And we've basically continued. So this is the main point that I want to focus on. This is why you can go on the Greens website and see nothing about climate change, but it's all about cost of living and housing affordability and blah, 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 because they're not a party of the environment. They're a party of socialists and Marxists. And that, and when I will go back and expand on this point, when they did merge with the Socialist Party was smaller in numbers, but they were far more organized politically. Whereas a lot of the old school Greens, they're just, greenies. They wanted to protect the environment. They weren't politically focused. They were a little bit naive. And the smaller faction of socialists came in and just ate them up to the point where they now control the party. And there's factions within the Greens as well. There's a socialist faction. There's the old school environmentalist faction. There's other factions. But this is the point. This is how the infiltration of the Greens happened, and it's clearly stated. I mean, this is just a fact of history now. But this is the reason why the Greens are dangerous, in my opinion. They push dangerous policies because it's coming from that communist, Marxist, socialist doctrine.
Yeah, I was not aware of that, but I do remember particularly when Bob Brown left the Greens, that there was definitely a redirection of the party, and a lot of their policies did change, and a lot of the vibe around them. They became, as you pointed out, they became very professional focused, they really started to organize, and that whole because when you and I were growing up, you think about the Greens, you think about Bob Brown. He's a bit of a diddler, like he'd like to hug trees and all that. But you kind of were like, yeah, that's a greenie. He was. Yeah. Like the whaling issue. But could you imagine the people today, like getting on a rickety old boat like that and going down to
Well, this article is really good. It's a little bit old now. It's from 2010. It was written by Kevin Andrews, who was the member for Menzies between 2016 and 2022. The ideological drive behind the Greens, and it details all this stuff. It details about Jack Mundy, who was a stated communist and part of the union movement, and he got involved with the Greens. It talks about Lee Rhiannon getting involved with the Greens. As I said, she was in the Socialist Party of Australia. Her parents were involved or leaders of the Communist Party of Australia. Talks about Adam Bant, who's the leader now, who was a radical student activist writing for Marxist websites, etc., etc., etc. They've used the Greens as a vehicle to push their far left-wing ideology, and that's why we have the policies that they're pushing through now. So yes, we can focus on their website and say how great and how fantastic it is. It's obviously grabbing people, it's grabbing their attention. They're very effective in that way. The danger of all of that is they're going to be taking those, I will call naive people that are not politically minded. They're not focused on politics. They're just seeing some nice colors, some nice images, and some powerful slogans, and they're going along with it, not realizing the bandwagon that they've just jumped onto.
Exactly. And as I said at the outset, that is not an insignificant number of people. So the undecided and the politically disengaged and those, they're up to 30% of the Australian population. Bless you.
Thank you.
The other thing that I just wanted to quickly say is I do think that when that shift in the party occurred, I couldn't help but notice that for me now, the Greens, as crazy as this sounds, seems to me from an outsider looking in to be an elitist party.
Yes.
I think that in order for someone to vote for the Greens, they have to have a measure of a comfortableness in their life that I could not imagine, right? Because when someone like me that's coming from a real working class and poor background sees something like no more coal and gas, this is deeply concerning because I understand what that means for my power bills. So I think that in order to support some of these policies, and like you said, I don't remember which part of the website it was on, but I do remember you mentioning about 514 million. And
billion.
there was billion. Did you say billion? Oh, shit. And there was no costing behind it?
No, nothing. Just said we have a plan. We have a plan somewhere. I don't know where it is.
That is deeply concerning for me because as you alluded to in your introduction to me coming on today, you said that I've been quite busy. Well, I wanted to move to Sydney. So I went out and I got 3 jobs in order to save up enough money to be able to make that move. Now, I can't tell you the amount of tax that I got paid on those 3 jobs. So when so people that don't have the visuals, it's 540. So my point is this, is that it makes me very nervous when you have a lot of these promises which sound wonderful, but you know, or I know that needs to come from somewhere. And often it has to come from taxes. And I think that in general, in this country, particularly when you compare it to other countries around the world, and let's just forget about some of the European countries, we pay a very, very high level of tax. And it got to the point where I was working those 3 jobs where I'm like, is it even worth my while working this 3rd job? Because I only seem to be working this 3rd job to pay my tax bill. Yeah. So yes, to me, the Greens equals elite. It equals luxury. It equals a level of comfortable that I don't relate to.
Well, you've been doing this throughout this whole podcast. You've been leading me into main points, which is really good because you're talking about people wanting to vote for the Greens are comfortable. They're not concerned about survival or paying the bills, or they're quite they might be wealthy or whatever. In this article written by Kevin Andrews, he talks about ecological Marxism, which is a term that was put forward by Jack Mundy. And from the Greens Global Charter, it says that we acknowledge that human beings are part of the natural world and we respect the specific values of all forms of life, including non-human species. Now, what that is basically saying is that humans are equal to, firstly, all humans are equal, but humans are equal to the environment as well. So we can't put ourselves as humans on a pedestal. We need to be equal with all the plants, all the animals, everything. So this is a focus of people that are incredibly comfortable. If you're focused on survival, you could care less about some native species, that's going to get torn down, or an endangered animal or anything like that. This is policy just for entitled elites that can take these views and say, yes, we're one with nature. and we're one because they don't have to worry about survival or cost of living or anything like that at all.
No, and as you read that out, I wrote down the greater good, because as you were reading that, for some reason, as you were reading that, I was thinking to myself, well, that's actually the perfect excuse to use things like putting in place directives and policies and lockdowns and mandates in order to achieve the greater good. And what could be argued by extension is that you could kill people for the greater good of civilization and or the environment. And people kind of scoff at that, but I feel like we saw a little bit of that during.
Or you can reduce the population for the sake of the environment because we're all on equal footing.
Yeah, but again, I don't think it would be. It would definitely be framed along the lines of we need to do this for the greater good.
Yeah.
And
I know we've got to finish up because we're almost at the 2-hour mark, and we didn't expect that.
Okay.
Oh, mate, we could probably go another 2 hours, but we've got a caller.
All pent up inside. I'm like, it's
yeah, you haven't podcast for a while, so yeah. Mr. Richard Storch, you've called in. You've just put yourself on mute again. Just can you unmute? How you going, mate?
So, Stephen, Victor, nice to see you again.
You keep putting yourself on mute. No, you're muting yourself all the time.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Don't touch anything.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear
you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, the thing about the Greens, which always makes their heads explode, is you ask them how they're going to pay for their ideas. And they reveal themselves straight away by sort of pointing to taxes that they'll put on to wealthy people or companies that aren't paying any tax. And it's so shallow and facile because the only companies that don't pay tax here are domiciled overseas, and we have tax treaties and trade agreements. So unless you want to reconstruct the whole nature of international business, there's not a lot you can do about it, except with very targeted policies, which are way beyond their imagination or capability of actually comprehending. So they can't even conceive how you would approach getting more tax from international companies, for instance. For a start, Australia's withholding tax is very, very low, and our company tax is very high. So we can't even get our heads around having a rational debate about that in the first place. So
but they don't even need to, Richard. This is the point. They just need to put a glossy little slogan out there to get the people that are just taking 5 minutes at the most to look at their website to get them to vote for them. That's what it's all about. This is the game. This is the political game right now in Australia and other parts of the world. It's those 5-second clips or TikTok clips or a glance at a website or some glossy slogans or anything like that. As Victor said, no one is going to go on a Labor Party site or a Liberal Party site and read all this text, read all these articles. They're not going to do it. They just want to see boom, 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 because they're making their decision like that in an instant. So you can understand how the tax system works and try and argue, but a lot of people are just going to switch off straight away because they've got too many other issues to focus on. That they could care less about company tax. They just want to hear that someone's got a plan to fix it, and they'll go along with it. And this is the problem.
So they're incredibly vulnerable to all kinds of deceit and duplicity.
Of course, and this is what we're trying to be. I mean, this is, I guess we probably should have framed this in the beginning. This is what we're trying to point out in this podcast.
Well, you've definitely illustrated it very well. Very well.
Well, thank you, Richard. That's what we try and attempt to do on this podcast. So,
perhaps you needed me to come along and say some directly offensive things.
Yeah, well, I was a bit surprised when I saw Libertarian campaigner because I thought, Stephen, weren't you saying before something about the Libertarian?
Well, Richard, maybe I don't know if you want to go into the weeds. Am I still on good terms with the leadership of the Libertarian Party after
He's
last
never
week?
been on good terms with them, Stephen. Never. But I think that's the way you like it. You want to be able to challenge them. You want to be able to confront them, and they're usually up for it too, by the way.
They are, and I'll give them that. I'll give it to John Ruddick and Rob Cribb, who came on last episode and confronted me, as you said, and defended their libertarian values. I mean, it doesn't matter if I agree with them or not. The fact that they're willing to do something like that, and I said it at the time, no other party would subject themselves to a long form podcast where they have to defend everything that and some hard issues about what they stand for. No other party would have done that. No other politician would have done that, in my view. And I think that shows that John Ruddick is a cut above the rest. And as I said, I don't agree with, a lot of the views that they were putting forward. I haven't brought myself.
I don't agree with some either. You know that. But it's like I agree with most of it, and you do too. It's not about perfection. And this is what the Greens have introduced to the political debate. They're introduced an extremism, a perfectionism, an intolerance, which is next level. Next level. They are not interested in what anyone else wants to think or say. Like, as far as they're concerned, the debate over climate change has already happened, and they won it. The arrogance of them is just extraordinary. It's next level.
Yeah, well, I guess the main question now, after everything that Victor and I have talked about, is how do we turn this around? How do we get? How do we counteract what the Greens are doing so effectively? Do we just look at them and say, hey, we just have to copy them and emulate what they're doing, or is there some way of being able to
learn from them? You're right about that. But we have to concentrate on winning over the people that are open to be won over. We will never get the fanatics. And I study the Enneagram. The Greens are a monoculture of one personality type, which is the reformer perfectionist. And most of the members are reformer perfectionists. They're extremists. And the only other place you will find that in the political spectrum is in the coalition women, where half of them are that profile. Like, if you look at Michaelia Cash and then compare her to, say, Sarah Hanson-Young, there isn't a lot of difference. They're both pretty shrill, intolerant, judgmental. There's not a lot of difference. And the reason why the Liberal women, the coalition women are such toughies is because no one that's any softer would ever survive. So the Greens are a party of extremism. Yeah.
Just a question, Rich. Does that play into this idea that you often feel with people, particularly people that are members of the parties like the Greens, this kind of virtueness where they talk about you're either with us or against us, and then the outcome of that sort of thinking is then cancel culture, and then this idea around controlling speech, because all of that seems to be linked.
Yeah, it is, and that's a really good question. The first thing about people of that personality type, and I'll use Adam Bound as an example. Adam Bound is almost like a reincarnation of Vladimir Lenin. He is literally prepared to kill 90% of the world's population for his pure vision of the future. He is that much of a fanatic. He is driven by anger and rage and a deep sense of shame about his own impurity, which he's projecting out. And this is why people like that are so incredibly dangerous, because they believe they are absolutely certain about their holy cause and the purity of it and the perfection of it. And they will literally do anything and say anything in the furtherment of that cause. You're dealing with someone that's like a cult person. They're just completely transfixed with their own vision of what perfection is. So that's why the Greens are so intolerant. They are not interested in engaging or winning over people. They just want to present a platform, and it's like if you don't agree with their platform, it's like chop off your head.
Well, we might need to chop this.
Your question, Victor?
Yeah.
Very, very good. Well, thank you.
The other terms that come to mind really are shallow, and their appeal, particularly on the website, which we've been talking about today, the appeal on the website is very narcissistic focused. So we spoke about this a lot, that this was about, I don't see me in it. I need to see me. It's all about me. I know it's a political party, but actually it's all about me. So that's a real narcissism that is prevalent across a lot of society. And then when you link that with like this Puritan sort of belief, and then this virtueness, and then everything else, and then link that also with cancel culture, and then the new free speech or anti-free speech and disinformation things that are coming through, it all makes kind of sense. And again, all of that.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
It's still a form of, again, to have that, you still have to have a certain level of comfort in your life.
Well, yeah, you have to be able to afford it.
Yeah.
And most of the Greens that I know are rich, wealthy, entitled. They've inherited early. They've sent their kids to private schools. They're total hypocrites.
Yeah.
Which I enjoyed sharing that with the Greens campaigners in Potts Point.
Just to finish
up, we don't know anyone like that.
Graham says, I agree with Richard. The Greens are a cult, and like all cults, they have blind followers willing to push each other off a cliff.
If only they would. If only they would.
Well, Victor, thank you for today. I know, knowing you, mate, you're probably dying for something to eat, and after we've gone 2 hours. Do you have any closing comments about everything that we've discussed today?
No, I've had a great time. It was really interesting, being able to kind of fuse all the different worlds, my interest in AI and online kind of realms, and then putting that with the political. I think I need to go and scrub up on my Australian national politics, but it's just so hard because it is at times just so boring. But it's been very fascinating, interesting conversation, and it's been a great way to get back into podcasting again. Thank you for having me.
Well, Victor, you're invited to any one of our party meetings. We have several a month.
Please don't. Well, look, Victor, I enjoyed it too, and hopefully we can have you on a regular basis. I think that's the plan. So, I look forward to future podcasts with you, Richard. I'm interested to hear the fallout from last week. Maybe we can talk about that behind the scenes. And for everyone who's watched this, hopefully you found it insightful. Hopefully you found it interesting. So if you did, please share this around. Share it to all your friends or your enemies, whoever you might have to share it to. If you know a Green supporter, share it to them. Maybe they'll see a new way or something like that. So
I love the first half.
And we just hook them in, they'll think, oh yeah, we're amazing, we're wonderful, you're Marxists. Oh, okay. But please share this out. As I say every single time, we do rely on our audience to promote this podcast, and also head to commandingthenarrative.com, sign up to the newsletter, keep up to date with everything that we're doing, and head to the Environment and Energy Forum as well. It's coming up very, very soon, in about a week's time. But thank you for everyone who's watched today, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you, Jim.